You're not a rich girl, and you ain't got shit, and you owe a lot of people anyway. You can't rely on your old man's money. You can't rely on your own damn money. America's pretty diverse. There's rich people, poor people, and in-between people, which is most of us. Even within a major city, you can turn a corner and go from nice to blight in less than a block. But where do you go if you want to see the poorest people in the nation? The general assumption is going to be large city centers with a lot of blight and crime. You also have to assume the poorest cities in America are going to be where people don't have jobs and where people who do have jobs earn meager salaries, at least for the most part. In order to determine which cities are the poorest in the US, we just needed to look at the percentage of people who live in poverty, the amount of money people make in each city, and the percentage of the population of each city where people are unemployed. And we only looked at the cities with more than 100,000 people. We're pretty sure there are teeny cities all over the place where people are even poorer than the places we're going to talk about today. And for all those who are wondering, Mappy screwed up during the Dumbest Cities video and he's out this week. He'll be temporarily replaced for this video. We'll see how his replacement does. So tighten your belts and try not to look at your bank accounts as we go through America's poorest cities. I'm from Springfield, MA, and I hate it here so much addicts and the gangs are on a high, so yeah. Our first stop on our tour of the poorest cities in the US of A begins in Springfield, Massachusetts, a smallish city on the southern border with Connecticut. Income levels in Springfield are some of the lowest in the US, where entire households earn, on average, only about $37,000 a year. Compare that to the richest large city in America, Pearland, Texas, where families bring in about $98,000 a year. That's nearly 3 times as much money. The richest place in America, period, despite population size, is Atherton, California, a tech hub near San Francisco, where families bring in about $443,000 each year. It would take Springfield residents 12 years to earn as much as Atherton people do in 1 year. Springfield was the first place in America where a car was driven. They weren't very reliable, but they got you from A to B. Today, people in Springfield still drive cars that aren't reliable. Last year, Springfield got a shiny new casino in town called the MGM Springfield. Most of Springfield doesn't have a lot of extra income to spend at the casino. Not that that will stop them from throwing their money away though. In fact, let's take a quick look at how much a typical Springfield resident can afford at their new casino. Since the average family in Springfield makes about $37,000 a year, and the average family budget is $63,000 a year, what the hell? How do poor people make ends meet? Birmingham is the worst. I gotta get out. Thanks, Kenneth Denson, for that comment. We head south for the first time as we spend a minute or two talking about Kenneth's hometown, Birmingham, Alabama. Here, the residents earn on average $33,000 a year, and the poverty rate is one of the lowest in the country too. Alabama's other poorest city, Mobile, isn't quite as poor, where people make a more reassuring $40K a year.
Birmingham is a city located in the north central region of the U.S. state of Alabama.
Hey, it's Google Mappy, our Mappy replacement for this video. Hi, Google Mappy.
With an estimated 2017 population of 210,710, it is the most populous city in Alabama.
Okay, I get it. Thanks, Google Mappy. Speaking of maps, where would a resident of Birmingham go for fun? Like, what do poor people do for entertainment? There wasn't an exact answer, but after searching the internet for like 2 minutes, it was clear that poorer Americans go to public parks and pools, fish, attend church, and spend time with family and friends. And guess what? Those things cost nothing. And sadly, poorer people don't have as much time to do those things. As research suggests, there's about a 10 to 12 year gap in life expectancy between the rich and poor. All Syracuse has going for it is Armory Square and a few decent areas in between all the ghetto. That's harsh, Ivan Toxie. Our 8th poorest city in America is Syracuse, New York, where 1 in 3 people lives in poverty, the 14th highest rate in the US. Syracuse has actually become more poor than any other major city. A few years back, Syracuse was the 10th poorest, and now it's the 8th poorest. Across America, in the big cities, poverty rates have ticked up, but overall, for everywhere else, poverty rates have gone down, and by quite a bit. About 10% of the US is less poor these days. On top of the poverty issue here in upstate New York, Syracuse actually gets more snowfall than any other place in America too, with slightly more snow than Worcester, Mass. And nearby Buffalo. As such, Syracuse residents pay about 25% of their home ownership costs on utilities, with a big portion of that going to their heating bills. So that also means for many months, it's extra tough to get to one of 4 Syracuse area super Walmarts. or one of 4 area Syracuse Targets. Since Target's groceries are about 15% more expensive than Walmart's, it's safe to assume the poorer folks patronize Walmart. Look at how many dollar stores are in the greater Syracuse region. Makes sense. I assume Jackson is the reason Mississippi is horrible. Well, Mr. Turd, if you're judging horrible by really poor, then Jackson would be the reason Mississippi is horrible. Not that it's horrible, but it's certainly poor. Mississippi's the poorest state in the nation, you know. Here in the capital of Jackson, less people are in poverty than they are in Syracuse, but overall, families make less money. Jackson's located along the western side of the state, and as you can see in this county-by-county map of poverty rates across America, a lot of western Mississippi is poor. Other poor hotspots include the US-Mexico border in Texas, a large part of rural mountainous Kentucky, and Native American reservations in both Arizona and South Dakota. This is where all the rich people live. Jackson's known for many things, including the place where some guy broke the record for a Dr. Mario score. Now, it used to be that you couldn't make a lot of money playing video games, but hopefully, that guy has made a profitable career here today. He'd be an outlier though, for sure. Now, do poor people play more video games? And what TV shows do they watch? Well, apparently the poorer you are, the more video games you play, by about 12 minutes a day. So are poor people playing more video games because it's cheaper than going out? Or are they poor because they play video games more? Let us know in the comments below. In terms of types of shows watched, anything with Steve Harvey in it caters to the poorest population. Showtime at the Apollo and Little Big Shots has the least wealthy viewers, along with Marlon on NBC, whatever that is. The TV show with the richest viewership? The Bachelorette. I'm from New Jersey. Camden and Newark are really crummy. Moving on, we come to our 6th poorest city in America, Newark. Here, the population averages about 10,000 more than the official poverty line at $34K a year, and the poverty and unemployment rates are dismally low. Of course, Ed in Florida referenced Camden being a real head case for drama as well here. If you compared Newark to Camden, Camden peeps make a little bit more money, and collectively are the 40th poorest populace in the nation. I guess Camden wins that battle? For many of Newark's poor, there are many opportunities as long as they try. Newark is the nation's 3rd largest insurance hub, behind Hartford and New York City. There are also a large number of tech companies and medical corporations headquartered here. Several notable Newarkians include Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, rapper Ice-T, and Steve Sanders from 90210. Oh yeah, and some scientists who helped Albert Einstein, but who cares about that? Apparently, the name of your kid can kinda a teeny bit determine their financial fate. Girl names like Amber, Heather, and Kayla, and boy names like Cody, Brandon, and Anthony are all taken by poorer people, at least across the board. If you want to be rich, name your kid Alexandria or Benjamin. Hey yo, this video is brought to you in part by Clippers on Martin Luther King Boulevard in South Jamaica. Come on and get your hair done, they do it tight and right. That's Clippers on MLK. G. Welcome back. We're halfway through our list of America's poorest cities. Our next stop is back in upstate New York. This time we're going to Rochester. One Rochester resident, 11B10, says, and I'll paraphrase, Rochester used to be the headquarters for several large companies back in the 70s and 80s, and then a heavy tax burdened businesses in the area. Now a lot of the larger companies have left, taking the local economy with them. Apparently most of that's true, the language is a little rough, but yes, Rochester was once a thriving city. It used to be a place where you could get your GED and make a pretty decent salary in what was considered a low-skill job. I wondered what type of music Rochester would listen to, and other poor communities. Apparently there's an answer for just about everything on the web. Poorer people like to listen to golden oldies, disco, and rap. Richer people like classical, opera, and rock. So who listens to Katy Perry then? 12-year-olds? My bank account is so damn low, I blame society. I need sobriety. I don't have cash, I don't have fun. I'm broker than everyone. I am so really poor. The story of Hartford is so sad. That place is foul now. Not too far away from Rochester is Hartford, Connecticut, our 4th poorest city. Hartford ranks in the top 10 in all 3 categories, and it has a high unemployment rate at 16%. Its poverty rate is twice the national average. Yikes. We actually just talked about Hartford in our last video on the dumbest cities in America. Here we are, face to face, a couple of stupid fools. Are dumb people poor? Apparently so. Or at least, poor people are likely less intelligent than wealthier people. Makes sense. Now back to that earlier comment. A pretty in-depth article talked about Hartford's fall from grace, noting that at one point, Hartford was the shiznit. Well, I read that article so you don't have to, and to some, Hartford is more expensive to live than lots of other places. People are leaving Hartford in droves these days, and crime is really high. And just like Rochester, when manufacturing left, so did the jobs, talent, and enthusiasm. Hartford used to have a hockey team, but they moved to Raleigh. They have a baseball team called the Yard Goats? Why are they called that? Anyways, I'm surprised Hartford residents have any supplemental income to go watch baseball games. There once was a guy from Dayton. His life he tried to straighten. In 2003, he got a degree. Did he get a good job? He's still waiting. We're almost to our poorest place in the USA, and we'll take a couple quick stops in Ohio. Here in Dayton, things are a real mess. 1 in 3 residents lives in poverty, and people barely crack the $30K mark annually for salaries.
Dayton is the 6th largest city in the state of Ohio and the county seat of Montgomery County at 803,416 residents.
Hey, Google Maps.
This makes Dayton the 4th largest metropolitan area in Ohio and 63rd in the United States.
Okay, Google Mappy.
Dayton is the 6th largest city in the state of Ohio and the county seat of Montgomery County at 803,416 residents. This makes Dayton the 4th largest metropolitan area in Ohio and 63rd in the United States.
Jeez. I think we might need Mappy 1 back sooner than later. Cleveland, Ohio. Born and raised there. Yes, it's terrible. Cleveland is straight Baroque. 35% of the city is poverty-stricken, and the average family lives just outside of poverty. If you live there, this isn't new news. At least the Cleveland sports teams have been taking people's minds off of being in the poorhouse. And there's theaters, nice restaurants opening up, and national orchestras in town, despite those being traditionally wealthy forms of entertainment. Can anybody weigh in on if Cleveland residents can actually afford to do these things? Apparently, though, the more you look online, the more optimistic you see Clevelanders talking about how their city's improving each year. That's great news, Cleveland. Like other cities on this list, we're pulling for you. And best of all, Cleveland, at least you're not Detroit. Detroit sucks balls. Detroit, what else can we say? Rogelio said it all. You're literally the poorest, least employed, and most poverty-stricken place in the nation. And that's despite the fact that people keep saying Detroit's getting better. Of course, you could talk about the decline of Detroit starting when car companies pulled out of town. That's part of it. You could actually spend an entire video talking about what happened in Detroit. But today, you can buy houses for $1, about 60% of the population's gone, and it's straight rough in most parts. But why Detroit? Chicago, Philly, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati were all somewhat spared, and other Rust Belt towns like Pittsburgh and St. Louis, and heck, even Cleveland, aren't doing that bad. Fact is, Detroit has a ton of catching up to do if it wants to somewhat resemble an actual American city at some point down the road. So that's it, our tour of the poorest cities in America. They're kind of spread out, but tended to be in the South, Northeast, or Upper Midwest. If you live in one of these cities, keep your heads high and keep working hard to get ahead in life. Or just play the lottery. That's what all the other poor people do. America sure has changed over time, and as we discovered in the last 5 years, more and more Americans are living outside of poverty. So that's great. Hopefully, our economy continues to improve so that more Americans can live life in relative comfort and don't have to worry as much about paying for healthcare and putting their kids through school so they can focus on whether their football team is going to make the playoffs or not. In case you're curious, these are the richest cities in America. If you live in these places, sounds like things are going pretty well right about now. Maybe it's time you guys consider giving back to the community a bit. The end. Hey guys, if you learned something new or you just like this video, make sure to like it. And if you really like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get all of our videos about what it's like to live in different places in America. Peace.